In a humiliating global takedown that has rocked the White House to its core, Danish officials have just flat out exposed President Trump's boastful historic deal to acquire Greenland as nothing more than a complete fabrication, a desperate scam to inflate his sagging approval ratings amid mounting scandals. With NATO allies piling on, calling it a dangerous fantasy that never even reached the negotiating table, this bombshell revelation has unraveled Trump's carefully crafted image as a master dealmaker, leaving him scrambling as markets tank and critics demand investigations into whether he knowingly sold Americans a lie for political gain. This isn't just a diplomatic blunder, it's the house of cards collapsing in real time, and we're breaking it all down. Let's start with the scam itself. Trump's bold claim of securing a concept of a deal for Greenland. It all began escalating in early January 2026 when Trump, fresh off his Davos appearance, announced what he called a breakthrough framework for U.S. access to the Danish territory. In a fiery speech at the World Economic Forum, he touted it as a national security triumph, unlimited military basing rights, resource extraction deals, and even hints of full integration into North America, all to counter China and Russia in the Arctic. He framed it as a win-win that would bring tremendous wealth to America, complete with vague assurances that Denmark was on board after months of back-channel talks. White House press releases amplified the narrative, with aides leaking to Fox News and other outlets that this was Trump's biggest foreign policy coup yet, boosting his poll numbers by 5 points overnight amid domestic turmoil. But here's the smoking gun. There was no deal, not even close. Trump had revived his 2019 obsession with buying Greenland, threatening tariffs on European allies to force Denmark's hand. At Davos, he walked back the threat slightly, claiming a framework had emerged. But insiders now confirm it was all smoke and mirrors, a unilateral declaration with no Danish buy-in. The Daily Maverick nailed it in their headline, "Trump goes Don Quixote at Davos," portraying him as tilting at windmills in a delusional quest for Arctic dominance. Climate change, ironically labeled a hoax by Trump, is melting Arctic ice and opening new strategic opportunities. Yet his aggressive tactics only alienated partners, turning a potential alliance builder into a self-inflicted wound. Now, the outing, how Danish MPs and NATO leaders publicly debunked the whole thing, calling it a fantasy that never happened. On January 24, 2026, just days after Trump's Davos boasts, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen held a press conference in Copenhagen, flanked by Greenlandic officials. Her words were scathing. There is definitely not a deal. Not now, not ever. This is not for sale. The Guardian reported Frederiksen's team providing emails and diplomatic cables proving no substantive talks occurred, only U.S. pressure tactics that Denmark rejected outright as violations of sovereignty. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte piled on during a Brussels briefing, dismissing Trump's claims as unhelpful fantasies that undermine alliance unity, especially with Russia eyeing Arctic gains. Greenland's own premier, Mute Egede, went further, accusing Trump of colonial-era thinking in a statement to Reuters. "Our land is not a commodity for American expansionism." This coordinated debunking wasn't spontaneous. It followed leaks from EU diplomats who confirmed Trump had exaggerated minor concessions, like expanded Thule Air Base access, into a full-blown acquisition narrative. The fallout was immediate. Trump's approval dipped below 40%, with even Republican senators like Lindsey Graham calling for clarity on the miscommunications. Critics, including former Obama officials, labeled it a Nixonian hoax designed to distract from domestic probes. This brings us to the pattern, how the Greenland hoax connects to the explosive 400-millimeter White House ballroom scandal, where detractors allege Trump is abusing public office for personal end runs around Congress. Sky News broke the story wide open with their January 25, 2026 report, Trump sued over $300 ballroom project, detailing a lawsuit by the National Trust for Historic Preservation and environmental groups. The plan? A lavish 400 million renovation to add a massive ballroom to the East Wing, dwarfing the historic structure and funded through a murky mix of private donations and reallocated federal funds. A federal judge in D.C. has already questioned the legal authority, pressing DOJ lawyers on how this vanity project qualifies as national security, Trump's go-to justification. But the real scandal? Allegations of asbestos exposure during demolition, with a new lawsuit accusing the White House of creating a toxic cloud that endangered workers. Critics link this to Greenland. Both involve Trump bypassing Congress, skirting appropriations for the ballroom, and ignoring Senate advice on foreign deals, while inflating outcomes for PR. House Democrats are now probing whether the deal was fabricated to divert attention from the ballooning 400 million costs, which Trump has ranted about on Truth Social as devastating if halted. It's a pattern of end runs, using executive power for personal wins, then hyping non-existent victories to mask failures. Finally, the fallout. Markets tumbling as the trade war threat over this fake deal terrifies investors. Trump's initial tariff threats aimed at Denmark and EU holdouts sent global stocks plunging 3 to 5% in a single day after the hoax unraveled. NBC News reported the Dow dropping 800 points, with European indices like the FTSE and DAX faring worse amid fears of retaliation. The IMF warned of a spiral of escalation, estimating a full trade war could shave 1 to 2% off global GDP. Trump's retreat, pausing tariffs and claiming a vague framework, sparked a brief rally, but skepticism lingers, with CNBC reviving the taco trade meme, tariffs avoided, confidence optimism, as ironic given the exposed lies. Diplomatically, allies are pivoting. The EU fast-tracks India deals, Canada deepens European ties, and Arctic nations exclude U.S. from talks. Domestically, calls for impeachment probes grow, with Biden-era holdovers demanding transparency on the scam. This could be Trump's undoing, a hoax too far in a presidency already mired in controversy. In conclusion, the Greenland debacle exposes a president willing to fabricate victories at any cost, connecting to broader abuses like the ballroom scandal and igniting economic chaos. As markets reel and alliances fracture, the question is, how much longer can the house of cards stand? If this eye-opening breakdown cut through the noise, smash like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We'll track every twist. Thanks for watching.